Hey guys, welcome back to another Sonic Academy video with myself, Nate Robenheimer of Protoculture and Shadow Chronicles. Today we are talking about streaming and mastering for streaming platforms. It's quite an important topic these days considering how most of us digest our music. We're going to take a look at some good practices regarding that, as well as a brand new plugin from Adapter Audio, the same guys that brought you Metric AB. It's called Streamliner, and it's a great little tool to help you with this exact topic. Let's dive in and check it out. Right, so a lot has changed in recent years with regards to how we digest our music. I mean, streaming has been around for a while, but also aside from the streaming, a lot has changed with regards to the codecs used for streaming as well. And this is a big deal when it comes to mastering your music. You really need to know what's actually happening to your audio when it hits those streaming platforms, because there are some technical glitches that can occur in certain circumstances. They are few and far between, but you do want to take steps most of the time to make sure that you're in control of that and you don't have problematic stuff happening on your audio once it hits a streaming platform. The first thing I want to talk about, traditionally with mastering, for the longest time, the thing to do is to master for CDs. So you're always dithering down from your audio. We've been working in 24-bit and 32-bit files for a while now, but it was always typical to dither down to a 16-bit CD master at 44.1 kilohertz. This is not actually the case for a lot of things these days. Like I said, a lot of the codecs have changed. MP3 is officially a dead format. It's still used in some places, but it's being phased out gradually and not being updated anymore. So you have codecs like Apple Music's AAC, you have FLAC, which is a lossless compression format. And with that comes some changes as well. I want to take a look quickly at just 3 streaming platforms. Spotify, obviously, which is one of the most popular. If you look at their specifications for audio, they have some information on the streaming or the compression formats that they use, AAC, OGG Vorbis, and the AAC V2. But the most important thing that you want to look at here is this line, the convert to wave 44.1 kilohertz. That's nothing new, but in brackets, keeping bit depth. Now, Spotify actually will keep the bit depth if you send them a 24-bit file. So there is no reason to dither files down to 16-bit anymore. You are effectively losing headroom when doing that. So keeping your files these days at 24-bit is a good practice for the most part. The same applies to Apple Music, for example. The files are actually put into a 32-bit encoder, I believe, so it prevents any sort of intersample peaks, etc. You can actually, 32-bit, you can actually regain audio after it's clipped. But they do take 24-bit sources. If you use the highest resolution sources, 24-bit sources, they want you to send that, and that also you don't want to be, they call it bit padding, going from 16 up to 24, but when you send that, just, leave your masters in 24-bit for the most part. You can do a 16-bit master as well, but for me personally, somebody that releases quite regularly, I can't remember the last time that I actually printed a CD where I necessarily had to have a 16-bit master. Another big platform at the moment, especially for people that are self-releasing, is Bandcamp. Bandcamp as well, they upload 24-bit files. You can send them 16-bit tunes, but once again, if you have the option to send 24-bit, why would you send a 16-bit file? You're losing that headroom there, so you might as well just send your files in that. They also, you can see here, they deal with FLAC as well, which is a lossless format. Coincidentally as well, the recommended upload file for Spotify is to actually send them a FLAC format file, it's easier for them to work with, and you actually do the conversion process then yourself. They don't have to convert to WAV for you. Now, not all DAWs will do that. I don't think Ableton and so on do FLAC output. Cubase, for example, you have that option in your audio exports. Once you've done your master, you can select FLAC, and you can also set the bit rate. So you can send them a 24-bit FLAC file, so that you have the sort of most control over what you're sending them. So that out of the way, there's a couple of other good practices that you want to look at when you are mastering your audio, specifically for streaming platforms. I want to quickly talk about intersample peaks. We have covered this on some other mastering tutorials on Sonic Academy before, but I just want to kind of reiterate this and look at another cool little tool inside of Ozone quickly as well that we can use when prepping stuff for streams. And that is tree peak limiting. And I'm not always a fan of tree peak limiting. Some people will say that you have to have it on. Some people say, they don't like the sound of it. I'm not always a fan of it. Sometimes on some tracks, if you push it too hard, you can sort of kill the transients slightly. That said, the Ozone one I've found to be quite good. But if you don't want to use the tree peak, for the most part, ISPs are not going to be too much of an issue if there's only just a few of them. When they can become an issue, though, is when you are converting into a compression format. And in that case, you want to kind of do a few steps to make sure that doesn't cause any issues down the line. So the first thing that you should be doing, as I'm sure a lot of you know, is to lower the ceiling of your limiter to at least sort of like negative 0.2 or 0.3 like I have here. This just ensures, the limiter shouldn't be having any intersample peaks anyways, but if they are, they shouldn't be much more than just a 0.0 dB or something like that. So just backs off slightly. And also with lossy formats like MP3, it's just good practice to kind of hold them back slightly, because you can sending in audio covering that full range of 24 bits, the full headroom, you can run into some issues when you are transcoding to MP3. So good practice, keep it at 0.3 dBs. And then, tree peak. Another option of the tree peak limiting is to use a high resolution clipper. They sound slightly different to tree peak limiters in some regards. One that I was quite a fan of is Kazrog's K-Clip, which has, I think it's 32 times oversampling, and that pretty much blocks off any ISPs that come through there. However, it cuts them off, it clips them completely. It's not a limiter that pulls them down, it literally just... it's technically distortion, but it's such minute amounts that you're not going to really actually hear any of that at all. And then what you want to do is just make sure that the output of K-Clip is set to a negative number here at the ceiling, so you're not hitting 0 all the time. So before we move on to Streamliner, which is a new tool from Adapter, Metric AB is one of my favorite plugins. I use it in every project I work on. So this is from the same company, but before we get into that, I just wanted to take a look at one little nifty tool inside of Ozone as well while we're here, and that's the codec section inside of Ozone 9. We can actually enable the codec, and you can do the same thing now with Streamliner, which I'm going to get to in just a sec. The one nice thing that I just want to highlight here with Ozone 9, if you weren't aware of this, is it actually has a phase flip function that you can flip the unencoded signal and compare it to the encoded signal. So you'll see if I turn off the codec now, I've got a track playing. Let's make sure we're okay. And we can turn the codec on and actually preview what our audio is going to sound like in various different bit rates. AAC as well. But the nice thing is that you can actually solo the artifacts. You can actually hear exactly what differences are occurring between your encoded signal and the unencoded one. And you'll hear a lot of the top end stuff is where it normally kind of has issues. So that is the difference between the encoded and the unencoded one. As you kind of flip up to higher resolutions, you'll see there's much less artifacts going up higher on. So nice little tool just for double checking things. But now we're going to cover that in Streamliner as well. So let's get in and open up Streamliner and take a look at what this does for us. So this essentially is two parts. You've got a monitoring section here. It's basically a loudness meter. You have a tree peak meter as well. Let's play back some audio so we can just see this working. So you've got your short-term loudness in LUFS integrated, and the momentary, which is the immediate readout. And then you've got an overall, this LRA, which is sort of a long-term one. If you play through the entire track, you'll basically get a readout of all the loud and soft areas. You can kind of see which are the loudest areas, and during the break, how loud stuff gets in there as well. A dynamic range meter, tree peak meter, all really handy little things to have at the end of a master chain. You've also got a reference track section, which works similarly to metric. You've just got a single track that you can load in here. What I do find this is handy for is for testing out different versions. So what we're going to come to now with Spotify and Apple Music, a lot of these streaming services actually tend to turn down your mixes to a much lower level. They do it automatically unless you send them a lower rendered mix. And it's quite handy to A/B different masters in this section here. You can do your pre-master. What's also handy is to check the difference between sort of a really hard master and maybe a more dynamic master. Now, whether you do a dynamic master or not, it's really dependent on the style of music. Typically, you kind of want more dynamics. Like, say, acoustic music really benefits from this system with Spotify because you can have more dynamics and it will turn that acoustic music up to match all the other music on Spotify. So you'll have it as loud as an EDM track, for example. In that sense, it's really good. But at the same time, if you're putting together a big EDM track or a dubstep, let's take a dubstep track, for example, it doesn't really make sense to do a dynamic master of that because part of the sound is the fact that it is slammed and big and, you know, almost free of any sort of change in volume. So in that case, you don't want to mess up your mix or the sound for the sake of having more dynamics for a Spotify format. You want to keep that the same, but it is nice to have the reference here that you can kind of test out different things and see how it's going to work on a platform, on different devices, etc. as well. So let's jump into this section here because this is the main sort of thing that you want to be looking at here. You've got a number of different presets for them here as well. Let me just quickly, in this section here, you've also got a low latency mode here. This does take quite a bit of latency to run the codecs because it's converting your files in real time. So you can run it in low latency mode when you're busy with your master and just use this as a meter. And then when you want to actually just test out your mix on different platforms, you can disable the low latency mode. Or if you leave it on when you turn on the codecs, you're going to have a little bit of silence before it kicks in. So anyways, let's take a look here. We're on the major platforms now. You've got a number of different presets at the top, different codecs. You've got all different bit rates for AAC, etc. Vorbis, which Spotify uses. We predominantly dance musicians here, I think. So let's just check out the dance music one. These are all kind of the most prominent places that you're going to be listening to dance music. They've kind of nicely organized everything here for us. And we can take a look at what this does now. So when we turn the codec on, it's essentially transcoding our audio in real time into the same format that you're going to be hearing on Spotify. And on top of that, we've actually got different bit rates for each of them as well. So we can play that back. take a listen to Spotify now on mobile. The free version of Spotify, which is a 160 kilobits per second OGG file, and the 321. Now, it's not going to be very apparent that there's a big difference between the two of them, but like I said, you do get issues sometimes where the mix is slightly off and it can cause problems in your stream. So this is really handy to just test stuff out. Think of it as like just sort of like a little testing hub that you can just make sure that everything is fine, and you can try out different mixes and stuff to make sure that you're going to get the best sounding mix on a specific platform. Now, just look at this section over here as well. You can see this little red over here. This means that we are currently over the specified target for Spotify. As I said, a lot of these streaming platforms actually turn stuff down. Spotify, for example, is going to be minus 14 dB. It needs to be at, minus 14 LUFS, the loudness for the track. And this track currently, it is mastered as a sort of CD master, so it's currently way over. If you want to listen to what Spotify is going to be doing with that, and then maybe A/B that with other tracks as well to make sure that it's going to fit in a playlist, for example, we can just hit match, play the track back, and we can see it's now matching pretty much with the Spotify targets. Let's just update this. Just hit refresh. And let's turn off the match so you can hear the difference. So you can hear it pulling it down now to hit that match for the target. Another handy thing with this is if you do actually want to export specific masters for specific streaming platforms, let's say you want to make sure that you have control over everything, you can turn the codec off and actually leave the match on and export a master at that loudness level to send to Spotify. So what you could do now is, with this enabled, go and export your audio mix down as a FLAC 24-bit file, and that would be the file that you send off to Spotify. Now, a lot of labels don't do this, but there are some that will know about this. If you are sending stuff yourself, I recommend you do it this way. I mean, that is Spotify's guidelines. We can go through some of the other ones as well. Apple, you'll see you've got a minus 16, and this is nice. This will actually automatically match for Apple now as well. So we'll drop the levels. Bandcamp obviously doesn't have any algorithm that's pulling volumes down. You'll send them a loud mix in 24-bit, like we discussed, and there you have it. Beatport as well. This is also nice. Beatport, for example, I've released tracks before where when you do the download, they sound fine, but sometimes on the actual website, the tracks don't sound great at all. And this is a good little tool, again, just to make sure that your preview tracks are actually working on Beatport. Same goes for SoundCloud, different streams, streaming formats that you can check out there. Mixcloud. YouTube is a good one, just a good example, because the low stream is 48 kilobits per second. It's really bad quality, that the low resolution videos, and we can clearly hear what that's doing here. Turn the codec on. And as you can see there, YouTube's also got a minus 14 LUFS target level as well. Lastly, there's just a couple of other cool little bits here. They've also included some sort of profiles for popular tracks that you can just rather than just checking these Spotify things, what you can do is to check your loudness, for example. We can look at the dance section, for example. Let's take Knife Party or W&W. Let's go with that. And we can just look at the loudness profile for that compared to our track. And you can see their loudness profile for that is really insane. It's actually matching upwards, even though our track is quite loud. You can see the target here is -5 LUFS, so that track is really squashed to crazy amounts of volume. I thought this track was loud, sitting at -8.5, but yeah. So you'll see that target will change as you change the tracks as well. Let's go with Pendulum. That's a little bit more reasonable, -8 LUFS. So a handy little tool just for kind of setting a bar to where you want to get your mix. Because remember, you'd typically be using this at the end of your mastering chain and tweaking your limiter to set up your track to where you want it to be. So yeah, that pretty much covers Streamliner. It's a simple tool, but really, really, really clever little thing to have on hand, especially if you are mastering your own stuff, and especially if you are self-releasing. A lot of people are doing that these days, especially through Bandcamp. This is a great thing to have. It is also part of the Plugin Alliance subscription. So once it's out, you've got that on hand as part of that. Yeah, so that's Streamliner from Adapter Audio, and just a general guideline to mastering for streaming platforms. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will catch you guys soon here at Sonic Academy. Cheers.
Thanks everyone for watching. We really appreciate all the support from you guys. If you love this video, then smash a like, and if you want to be notified about new videos, hit the subscribe and notification buttons. Peace!